What's good, people? And I wanted to come on today and talk a little bit about the updated needs list for the Washington Redskins heading into this draft. And the first things first, you have to look at what are the major needs. In my opinion, the number one need continues to be left guard. Now, I know a lot of people will preach for the quarterback position at this point, and I can completely understand that. And to be quite honest with you, the way the draft lays out, the quarterback position may be the spot that we need to go for in the first round. It just all depends on how number 15 works, where the draft lays when we get there. Now, in my opinion, I don't think the best player available at 15 is going to be a guard, even though I do believe that's our top need. Now, some might argue we got Ereck Flowers the other day. I personally don't think that changes any of our needs. Now, I'm not a member of the coaching staff, but I certainly hope that they agree. Now, when you look at the needs list, you have to know that no matter what the Redskins do in the first round, they're possibly going to be forced, if they don't take a wide receiver in the first round, to take one in the second. There's really no way around it. The team has such a dire need at wide receiver right now that it's hard to look past. In my opinion, possibly need two of them. But let me start off looking at the quarterbacks. Now, in my opinion, if we take a quarterback in the first round, it really comes down to three different names, okay? Dwayne Haskins, Kyler Murray, or Drew Lock. Now, I'm not trying to take away from what Kyler Murray brings to the field. I just don't think that he's going to be available, and I'm not all that certain he would fit all that well. Now, Haskins is interesting, but at the same time, I'm just not, I am not a fan of thinking about taking an Ohio State quarterback. And I've heard a couple reports pop out about us moving up to take him. And that would be absolutely positively a horrible decision, in my opinion. Now, granted, I didn't watch every single play that Haskins brought to the field last year, but I think his 50 touchdowns are a little bit faulty, just my opinion. My pick here would be Drew Lock, but I have the thought in the back of my head that I do not think the Broncos will allow him to fall to us at 15. I think he goes at 10. Now, I'm sure you're going to have, your different camps of people that are wanting to go ahead and move up and take a guy. But you have to be sure that you're making the right move. See, 'tis the season to be lying. And right now, teams are trying to do whatever they can to try to make their pick more valuable. Now, the Redskins sit right in the middle just about at 15. The only more in the middle they could be is 16. And to look at it, if their player is not available at 15, they should slide back. They definitely shouldn't move forward unless they know the player that they're selecting is going to be a player for years to come and somebody that's probably going to start from day one. I don't see Dwayne Haskins starting day one. I'm not necessarily sure Drew Lock starts day one. I think Kyler Murray, if you move up to take him, has to start day one. And these other guys, if you start thinking about it, they almost have to start day one if you move up to take them. I'm just not a fan of it. I'd be completely happy if we stayed where we are and then in the second or third round addressed a quarterback position if we can't get one in the first. Now, of the guys that are available past the first round, there's really not a guy there that's going to start his first year. There just isn't. I personally like Tyree Jackson. He's going to take a year or two, though, to get right. Daniel Jones, if we can wait, wouldn't be a bad idea. But his scouting combine just did not look good at all. But, in my opinion, there's only 3 first-round quarterbacks there. And I've said that since the very beginning of this process, and I'm going to continue to say it. And I don't want to move up. That being said, looking at the wide receiver position, there's a lot of guys that the Redskins can look at, if not just in the first round, possibly second and third round, and even further into the draft. There's a few guys in this draft that maybe could fit what we're trying to do. I like Deebo Samuel from South Carolina. I don't know if he'll still be there in the second round or maybe even push it to the third, which would be unbelievably great. Or Marquise Hollywood Brown from Oklahoma. It would be great to be able to get, Brown from Oklahoma in the second round if we could. I doubt that could happen. A lot of people are trying to drive his stock up, and albeit probably a good idea considering how fast he is, I believe he may have helped Kyler Murray's draft stock you know, unbelievably. And, you know, DK Metcalf has been the guy that stood out for me. You know, I've heard the guy's got a problem with his route tree. I've looked at a little bit more tape. Seems like he really only has two moves, which is deep and across the middle or whatever. But I believe this guy could be a great, you know, product down the road. I'm not so certain what he could do year one. Now, his measurables are unbelievable, and he's a complete freak when it comes to his size, his speed, everything else. So, you know, I'm completely sold on this guy when it comes to his talent level as far as athletic ability. It just comes down to all the things you can't measure, you know. And I don't really know what to think when it comes to Metcalf as far as that's concerned, but he's definitely somebody that's on the forefront of my mind. I like Harry from Arizona State as well. You know, I've been somebody that's been talking about Kelvin Harmon for a while now. I see him on the TV a lot around here, you know, living close to Raleigh. And, you know, Paris Campbell was a burner. I mean, these two Ohio State guys were just unreal at camp as far as being able to, I mean, at the scouting combine, as far as being able to turn it on speed-wise. And, you know, in between, there's a bunch of guys in there I've had pointed out to me. I had a guy point out Akeem Butler to me the other day, and to be quite honest with you, I had seen him in the sheet, but I didn't see his 40 time until he was pointed out, and I went and looked and was like, wow, you know, 6'5" and a 4.48 40 is monster level. And there's other guys in this list that I think should be given recognition. Now, the Redskins, in my opinion, have to draft 2 wide receivers. You know, I know maybe somebody will step in and say, oh, we could still wait to sign one. They need to draft 2 wide receivers in this draft. You know, they lost Jamison Crowder, which hurts, but they felt like they shouldn't overpay, and I can kind of understand that. But they need to take an outside guy. Slot receiver may not be the place to go here, especially if you're picking in the first round. You cannot take a slot receiver in the first round if you're the Redskins this year. You already have one. You need to look for an outside guy if you take a receiver high. You know, looking further at the list of needs, you have to look at edge rusher. I mean, it's really a major need there. I know that people have thrown me some ideas about what they think we could do as far as grabbing this guy in free agency and that guy in free agency. Free agency is always going to be an overpaid way of getting a talent. You know, with the draft and the way these rookie contracts are working in our favor now, it's almost imperative that you have to take your edge rushers once every 4 years unless they break out. And then you end up like Dallas with Lawrence, you have to overpay to keep, or you have to make the decision to start over. Now, in my opinion, the 2 guys that we should take a look at and keep our eyes focused on are Brian Burns from Florida State and Montez Sweat from Mississippi State. These 2 guys, I think, are going to be the best 2 pass rushers in this draft. Now, I have looked at a lot of stuff on Polite, I believe is the way you say his name. And I've looked at a lot of stuff on a couple of other guys like Farrell, who seems to be more of a 4-3 guy. Josh Allen's a monster. Nick Bosa, you know, a lot of people question, will he have injury issues? But he looks like he could be a monster. The guy that we might be able to get our hands on that I believe really would tear it up will be Sweat. I've heard some things pop up about him having a certain type of heart condition, and that kind of scares me a little bit. But at the same time, let's just be honest for a second, and I'm not trying to look at this guy and say that he shouldn't take his health into consideration of his life, but honestly, he probably has a 6 to 7 year window to play football. And if the Redskins bring him in and play him and he does what I think he can do, you know, possibly he could be worth the draft pick for that 6 or 7 years. And that's life. You know, I know I've looked at Rashawn Gary a little bit too, and he looks like he could have some things in there, even though he didn't put a lot of sacks together in college. You know, his stock is pretty high. In my opinion, I would like to have Sweat. He was the guy in my original mock draft that I did every team on that I selected for the Redskins was Sweat. I mean, he's the guy that I thought could possibly take us to the next level, could do things that we need done. I feel like he could be everything that Preston Smith is not. I also feel like the team made the best decision by not giving Preston Smith that money that Green Bay paid him. feel like that was the right move. He is not worth that kind of money. Just not, at least not to us. Maybe they could do more with him than we were doing. Who knows? I doubt it, though. He's like the king of almost there. The next thing I want to look at will definitely be the guards. In my opinion, I would like to be able to take 2 guards in round 3. Now, the reason I say that is the talent lines up to be really, thick in that round. Just my opinion. I could be completely wrong. Who knows? I'm looking at basically taking 2 guys out of that list right there. Now, I expect the Redskins to take 1 in the 3rd or 5th rounds, and I expect them to take another one in possibly the 6th. Now, they could surprise me and take both in the 3rd, but I doubt it. The talent does line up to where they would be able to pick 2 good ones in the 3rd round, unless there's a run on guards in the 2nd round, which we all know could possibly happen. And it pretty much does happen every year as far as linemen go. Of course, the run normally happens on tackles. There's some people that think that we could possibly get a guard and a tackle. Me personally, I don't personally think that we need another tackle. Just my opinion. But I know that an argument could be made for any of these guys. We need depth across the line. And that's just the way it is. With all the injuries we've taken the last 2 years, the line needs to be shored up when it comes to the depth. We have a very good starting line. The false pretense that's given is that our line is bad. And everybody always wants to tell me about how bad our line is. Folks, the line is actually good. The depth is bad. Last year, we were down to like our 6th or 7th guard. Like all of our guys were hurt. When you get that depleted, then it starts affecting everything. There's nothing you can really do. You're picking guys up off the street. We don't have a minor league in the NFL. That's why the AAF becoming a secondary league is actually pretty important. But at this point right now, you're just grabbing guys off the street who maybe are flipping burgers the week before or selling cars or whatever. And, the next thing I want to look at would more than likely have to still be linebackers. I know a lot of people are trying to say, the Redskins are not going to go after any more linebackers because of Reuben Foster coming in. The Redskins still don't know how that's going to work out. And I feel like they really want to be able to make a move at inside linebacker if they can. If a guy is sitting there, it might even play into what we do in the 1st or 2nd round, depending on if the right guy has slid or if the right guy is sitting there. For instance, in the 1st round, Devin White, he's a guy that a lot of people think could maybe go top 10. But then if you have a run on quarterbacks or offensive pieces, this guy might slip out of the top 10. So keep an eye on him. But he's a hell of a player. And then you got Devin Bush from Michigan. Both of these guys, the 2 Devins, are usable in pretty much any scheme as far as the inside position goes. And I like both of their games. White's a little undersized. But the inside backer position could be one that we address maybe in the 5th or 6th round as well, which we got, some depth there in this draft. And I'll be honest, I haven't exactly looked over the mid to bottom tier guys in the linebacker category, but I probably should, because I feel like the Redskins will probably be looking the 5th or 6th round to add another backer if the right guy's there, or maybe even early, like I was saying a second ago. Now, is this a position where they should think about it in the 1st round? As I stated before, it possibly will be if the right guy slips, but more than likely, no. I feel like even though it's a major need, it doesn't rank next to wide receiver, edge rusher, or quarterback, which are our 3 major needs coming into this draft based on talent, and then guard would fall in right behind that, even though, in my opinion, guard is our most questionable position. You have to follow me on that, because you have to draft your talent, not draft your need, okay? You have to draft the talent that's available. It's the talent that's there. You have to draft that talent, not your need, because if you draft your need, necessarily, you'll end up, reaching for a pick and wasting your picks, and then 4 years from now, these guys are just going to walk. Next, I want to kind of take a look at safeties. And I know that a lot of people are thinking, since we brought in Landon Collins, that we're not going to need to take a safety. I'm going to be honest with you, with not knowing what's going on with Monte Nicholson, and then, the depth that we have there is not really one that's, we got Everett. He's more of a special teams guy, though. He's never been really given the starting job, but I think it should be telling that they try to do everything they can but make him the starter. But safety is a position that really doesn't have a clear-cut first-round guy this year. Some people may argue that there's one sitting there. In my opinion, Jonathan Abram from Mississippi State, maybe. Nasir Adderley, maybe. Thompson from Alabama, maybe. But the Redskins may, in fact, get a chance to catch somebody like Adderley or Thompson in the second round, or maybe even the third round for somebody like Abram if they slip. I'm not saying they 100% will, because a team like Seattle will probably be in the market for one of those three guys, and maybe even Thornhill from UVA there. And a couple of those guys on that list may even go a little higher before it's all said and done. But if I'm the Redskins, I'd have an eye on Thompson, just because he knows the pro set defense we already use. He knows the three deep safety sets we use. He's just already ready for it, and his teammates are already there with him, or there for him, excuse me. But I don't feel like we should run out of our way to go after Thompson at this point. I feel like he could be a top of the second round guy. I've said before, maybe the Redskins should look, outside the box and maybe take a couple of those picks and think about moving up at the top of the second round. It's never a bad idea to look at what's fallen in the first. And the next position I think we should take a look at is cornerback. I do not expect the Redskins to be a mid-tier player in this situation. I feel like if they take a corner, it's going to be a first or second round pick. It's going to be a top of the line kind of guy. They're not going to be looking for anybody at the bottom. So you really have to look at the top three names, in my opinion, on this list: Greedy Williams, Byron Murphy, and DeAndre Baker. Now, what I've seen about Williams, I might actually be a little upset if we took him in the first round, but I don't think we're going to get a chance. I think somebody else is going to scoop him. Murphy looks like he could be a guy that would fit right into what we already do, and Baker in my opinion, is the best of these three. So if the Redskins were to grab a guy, I think it would possibly be in those three guys, and possibly the first or second round. Maybe they could get, maybe one of those guys slips. I doubt it though. But if one of those guys slips, maybe they could get him in the second. The team has to think about corner though, because I keep hearing all this talk about maybe moving on from Josh Norman eventually. And I'm not saying that they don't have Dunbar, who I believe is already the best corner on the team, but you have to position yourself to be able, to take a hit like that and not have the defense fall flat on their face. So, it's going to be in the back of their head about corner. One last position I'm going to look at is center. Now, in my opinion, this is always like that weird position that, the way that our team works, the Redskins, they don't necessarily draft a lot of centers. They tend up taking a guard who could play center, and, you can move him around the line, which is actually smart in today's NFL. But at one point, you have to sit back and say, if we can get our hands on a guy that maybe fits what we're trying to do, maybe we could move Roulier over to guard and let him play left guard, and then you have a much more versatile line. If your center were to go down, Roulier could slide back. You could do different things. Most centers can play guard too. So the way I'm looking at this is, maybe in the third round, if they could get one of the top two guys, on the prospect list, that'd be great. Maybe they could catch one further on in the draft. I believe Roulier was, a sixth-round draft pick, and was a steal in my opinion. But it's just a position I feel like the team should always take a look at when they have, 8, 9 picks, maybe 10 picks or whatever. maybe an extra pick in there to be able to play with. This is something I think they should take a look at. Now, at the same time, it's worth pointing out that I also think that maybe they should think about trading some of these picks. They have 9. Maybe they should think about trading one of the 2 of these picks into next year's draft and get better picks out of it to start stockpiling next year. Just my thing. I like how they do that. I like when, when a draft starts off and I say, oh, my team's got 8, 9 picks. I realize that the extra picks we have this year are a result of the comp picks we got. I know some people are already buzzing about the Eric Flowers thing, and we're not going to get a comp pick. Folks, the comp pick procedure is real intricate, okay? So there's no guarantee we would have ever got one. It's all based on performance, okay? And basically, if we lose a 6th-round pick, it'll be because Flowers shows out. He does well. If he doesn't do well, then we won't, it won't hurt our comp pick situation. You guys have to understand that comp pick process is intricate. It's not, you can't just say, oh, it's going to be this or that. I mean, I did a breakdown on it, and the people who guessed how many picks we got said we would only have 8 picks going into this draft, and we ended up with 9. It's a different process. You have to wait till the end of the year to be able to see what's going to happen. That's just the way it works. I mean, I know some people are confused by it. I'm confused by it. I didn't understand the process until they actually told us how many picks we had, And, looking at it, this could be a very successful draft if we hit all of these needs like we need to. I see it here on the FanSpeak list. They've got defensive line and running back on this list as well. I don't think we need to take defensive linemen this year. That's just my opinion. I think we're stacked there. Maybe we pick up another guy, a couple guys for camp bodies. Running back, late round running back. Now, that could be a thing. I could see that happening. But I feel like we're deep at running back. Why would we pick another one? And you know what? Just for shits and giggles, let's go ahead and do this draft. We'll do this mock. It's the first mock on the simulator that we've done this year. Let's see here. 12, 13. Kyler Murray goes 13. Farrell goes 14. All right, so we can go to all players, and we see where we're at. I mean, as far as the simulator goes, the simulator gives us the option to be able to take Greedy Williams, Haskins, Burns, Gary, Hockenson, Sweat, Cody Ford, Harry. We could trade back and still have a chance at a bunch of good guys. Wow. If the draft falls like this, I'd have a hard time deciding which one I'd want to pick, because you'd have a chance at Haskins, Burns, or Sweat. Wow. I think Hockenson, even though I do like what he can maybe bring in the future, I think he might be a tad overrated there at 17th. That's just my opinion. It would be hard to not take Haskins at this point because of the need of quarterback, and it would hard to not take Burns at that point. So I'm not going to select anyone. That would be one I'd have to think out if I was doing this particular draft here. But that's about all I got. Hail to the Redskins. Peace.